Hi, I'm James, and today I'm taking a look at the HP X360. This is the 15-inch version with the code BP100NA, and I bought it from the HP website in the past few days. And we can see here, first of all, boxed up. Interesting new design on the box. We've got the new HP logo here, which is quite funky. Kind of a black and white finish to the box, but slightly glossy. Nice looking box, not a lot more to say on that. And then inside we of course have the laptop itself. Then we have power lead, other part of the power lead, and we also get a stylus pen because this is a touchscreen fold around similar to the Lenovo Yoga style laptop. So I'm just going to get this unpacked. Underneath all of this we then have the manuals tucked away in the base here. No, in fact, just a quick start sheet. We don't even get much in the way of manuals anymore on machines. So we're just going to get this machine opened up and take a look at it. So this is a relatively high-end laptop. So we have the Core i5-8250U. This is the Kaby Lake refresh product. So it is a quad-core chip. Runs with a base clock of 1.6 GHz, which will seem low, but that is largely because we've gone from 2 to 4 cores, and it does still turbo up to 3.4 GHz. There are higher clocked models as well, but I didn't want to shell out the extra for the i7. This laptop in particular also has the NVIDIA GeForce MX150 graphics, which was a large part of why I've bought it. I want to test the combination of the MX150 and UHD 620 graphics, and this allowed me to do that all in one machine. Otherwise we have a 128GB SSD paired up with a 1TB hard drive, so we should have nice fast boot speeds, but also some mass storage as well in there, which is good, particularly for me because I'll be installing various games onto that to try out. And elsewhere we have a 1080p screen, and being one of the 360 models, this can fold around, so you can use it for propping up and watching movies, or you can lie it all the way flat. Now it's a bit big for this machine to be using as a tablet. The weight of it is just over 2 kilos, so you're not going to be walking around with it like you might an iPad, which is more like sort of 300 or 400 grams. It's a chunk heavier than that, but if you do want it for that kind of usage on occasions or to lay it flat on a table, you do have those options. I previously had a Lenovo Yoga, and these things are pretty useful. I do tend to quite like them, but like I say, 15 inches is pushing sort of the upper boundaries of utility for that. You wouldn't want any bigger or any heavier. Looking around the machine, so we have this nice metal finish to everything. There's a bit of flex in the base, which I was a little bit surprised about. So if you press in the wrong place, you kind of get this click as the base moves around slightly. But we have the Bang & Olufsen audio. We have this nice speaker grille pattern. Screen, glass, black surround. Looks nice enough. And then moving around, so we have HDMI output, full-size HDMI there. USB 3, power button and headphone sockets, along with a hard drive activity light. Around the back we just have this little NV logo on the hinge. The hinges are sort of not like the very intricate Lenovo Yoga ones they use now, it's just more of a standard double hinge for the screen. And then down this side, second USB port, volume rocker buttons by the looks of it, USB-C and an SD card reader. So we don't have a huge number of USB ports. I mean, we've got 3 if you count that, and then power lead down here, but otherwise pretty standard fare. So having run through the initial setup, first impressions of this are pretty good. Boot speed seem with the SSD to be where you'd expect. I'm going to check, but I believe this is an NVMe SSD. I mean, as we can see coming up from startup there, that very fast boot times. General impressions of the inputs on the laptop, that's always something that's fairly important. So we have the keyboard, feels fairly good to type on, fairly standard sort of chiclet style keys. One thing that does bug me a bit on modern HPs is these slash here. On a UK type keyboard should be up here, and I think HP are sort of standardising to what's closer to a US layout, so we don't have the 2-level enter key. And we have the slash down here, which is a bit annoying. But the keyboard itself is backlit. We can switch on and off the backlighting here. We have a fairly wide but not overly tall touchpad. Again, responsiveness on this is good. And if we just take a look, I believe it is... The touchpad is one of the... No, it doesn't look like it is one of the Precision ones, so they're using their own software rather than the Microsoft stuff. But even so, it feels fairly good in use. Other specs of the system, it does have 8 gigs of RAM. I think we've covered most of the other parts. It ships with 1703 version of Windows, so the Creator Update. Of course, the full Creator Update is available now. And using the pen, I believe it does have... I can't, on the applications I've tested so far, I couldn't see much in the way of... sort of sensitivity to the different pressure, but it seems to, you know, respond fairly nicely, follow pretty well behind, not too much lag in use. So if you want to use the system for taking notes or doing drawings, I'm sure it would be quite adequate for that as well. The touchscreen as well, you know, works just absolutely fine as you'd expect on this. The digitizer, no issues. It does mean, of course, if you ever do anything like drop it and break the glass, then you've got the issue of replacing that, which you don't have on non-touch laptops. But being one of these fold-around sort of 3-in-1 laptops, you know, that's always going to be the case. Now, unfortunately, being an HP, there is quite a bit of pre-install stuff on this. We do get this nice active pen for using it, but we get McAfee pre-installed, which I hate personally. Then we have icons for Netflix, Dropbox, Amazon, and various other bits and pieces of software. Now, personally, I'm going to be going through erasing the whole machine off and doing a clean install onto it. With the pen, when you try, you can't sort of scroll up and down these lists. As soon as you press on anything, it just goes to move it. I'm not sure if I use the other buttons. No. So that's a bit of a pain. So really, for a lot of things, using your finger or using the touchpad is actually going to be easier, but the pen's quite good if you want to use some applications for drawing. So yeah, a bit too much on the pre-install side for me, but we do have this nice 1080p touchscreen. We can see by default 125% scaling, which is probably sensible for a 15-inch laptop. I may switch it down to 100% just because I'm happy using this kind of screen without scaling, because I have quite good eyesight, but a lot of people wouldn't like that, so it's a sensible default. But yeah, overall the initial responsiveness of the machine seems incredibly good. It loads up quickly. I get the impression this probably is an NVMe SSD, so we will check that in a moment. And we can see here that we have the 4 cores and 8 threads, so if we change this graph to logical processors, we get a full 8 threads in there, as this is a quad-core processor, despite only being one of these 15-watt Ultrabook chips. So just to round off this first impressions, we have a couple quick tests. So first of all, if we bring up Cinebench, so this is Cinebench R15, and we're mostly using this it's a nice demonstration. So we can see here, if we run the CPU test, it should now generate, yep, there we can see it working on 8 threads at a time. And we can see if we go into Task Manager and look at the performance, what clock speeds are like, so we're actually seeing it, for a moment there it was running over 3 GHz, and this is the way turbo works. We should hear the fans starting to step up as it gets a bit warmer as well. So even with all 8 threads running, pretty high occupancy, we're still getting about 2.4 GHz. That would possibly step down depending on the kind of workload you're running and also temperatures, so it won't necessarily be able to sustain this level of performance for very long periods of time. But even so, this is a 15 watt chip, so having 4 cores, 8 threads running at 2.4 GHz is fairly impressive. And if we let that run through, and we can just see where the result will compare. Obviously a lot of these are sort of desktop chips or much higher power laptops from previous generations. But with that coming to a completion now, so we have a score of 556, so that's actually between, yeah, we're looking around the same level of performance as a 3rd generation quad-core 45 watt chip. Very close, it's sitting between a i7-3840QM and a 3720QM. A little confusing why the 3720QM is faster than the 3840, but even so, quite impressive. When you compare that to a 3rd generation dual core, you're looking sort of 2.5 times the score. And then if we don't want to save that, and if we go and take a look, so here we have Crystal Disk Mark. I'm just going to run the sequential tests on here, and this will help us tell if we're seeing results around about the 300 megabytes a second mark. Then we are looking at, about the 600 megabytes a second mark, then we're looking at a SATA SSD, otherwise it will be an NVMe. So I should have set this just to run a single test. We can also see here, so out the box we're using about 33 gigs of that 128 gig, or 120 after formatting, SSD. Okay, so we're seeing 547 megabytes a second, so it's possible this is just a SATA drive. That, or even if it is NVMe, then the fact that it's quite a low capacity drive means it may not just have enough channels of flash memory to get higher speeds anyway. And we'll just see what it comes through with on write as well. And so yeah, those aren't amazing numbers, but perhaps what you'd expect with 128 gigabyte SSD such as this, but we could, put in a faster SSD than that if we wanted as well. And we will be looking on the channel at stripping down the system and changing the hard drive, SSD and memory as well in the near future, so do hit subscribe if you want to see that from us when we've got it done. So I hope you found this quick run through useful. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments below. I do my best to answer them, although I don't always have massive amounts of time for it, but ask and I will try to get round to giving some answers. We are going to be running a whole suite of performance tests on this in the future. But first impressions, I think I paid £920 with a discount code direct from HP for this, and it seems, it's not a cheap laptop, but for the money it does seem like a nice quality product, and hopefully it's going to have the performance to match. Thanks for watching.